The majority, right? I mean, the majority can. That's why
for you
it
to
was
say
created.
that is like it hurts me. It like literally erases my identity for you just to be like, yeah, well, the majority. It's like, well, I also exist. Like people who are not one or the other also exist, and like there needs to
Well, how do
be
you, why,
allowance.
I mean, but I'm talking about like biologically speaking. All right, we're recording and we're gonna be good. Thank you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Welcome to Bearing the Hell podcast. Today I have Unicole on. So I was introduced to you by Alexandra. She was on before, and I don't even know how to start this podcast. So you're a cult leader.
I'm a pop star cult leader.
You're a pop star cult leader. So I definitely want to ask a lot about it. But is that something? Is this is it self-proclaimed?
Yes.
Or did people say that to you and then it grew from there?
No, I created a cult.
Okay, so I guess I'll just start with when. How long ago?
I started Unicole in 2012, in like November of 2012.
And why did you start it?
I wanted more stimulating energy in my life, and I also wanted to change the world because I was really upset with how the world is. So I thought, well, groups of people are the most powerful force on the planet. I figured that out. And so I said, I'm going to start a group of people.
So I mean, obviously everyone knows cult has like a very negative connotation to it. Is that something you know and acknowledge? And is it something you try to push back against with your cult?
Yeah, it's kind of a complicated answer, but I'll explain it. So in Unicult, there's two different ways of learning information. We identify two different ways of learning information. The first is brainwashing, which is just internalizing information without giving it deeper thought or deeper consideration. So it's when you just accept a piece of information as true, even though you don't validate it or verify it yourself or think deeper about it. The second way of learning information is by thinking deeply. So when people hear the word cult and they get afraid and they back up and they say, I don't want anything to do with that, they are being brainwashed in the sense that they're taking on information without thinking deeper. And so in order to join Unicult, you have to be somebody who is willing to look past appearances and be willing to look deeper into reality. And those are the type of people who make it into Unicult. So those are the type of people who we have in our group, are people who understand, like, yeah, this is a scary word, but it's almost like you can't judge a book by its cover. Right? So it's a version of that externalized so that people can make their own mind up.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's really, I mean, definitely that's an interesting way to look at it. But cults got a negative connotation for a reason, right? Why is it that you think that the word cult has such a negative connotation? What is the historical, the cults in the past, or what are things that have happened that are very negative that are associated with cults?
I think that there are a lot of really positive cults that never do anything bad that would be considered cults. But I think the word cult is used derogatorily by media and by, everyday usage, where a lot of times the word cult gets attached to a group after something bad has happened.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of small religious movements that you could call a cult that have gone on for, 50, 60 years without any negative incidents when people are happy and learning and growing and fulfilled spiritually.
Yeah.
I've heard a few different definitions. One of them is a cult is what a large congregation calls a little congregation. So there's a lot of different ideas about that. I also embrace the term sort of as a white person in the New Age movement, because there's a lot of people who are very appropriative of other cultures when they're practicing spirituality. And I think that in order for, us to reclaim sort of and heal spirituality as white people, we have to heal the idea of what it means to be a cult and what it means to have our own culture and all of that. And that's not to say that there aren't people of other races in Unicole. We have a wide variety of different people, but just as the leader, I embrace that term for that reason.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all. I mean, that is really awesome. I've never really thought about it like that. I've never, dug deep enough, but I think we all know, like, anything that's a collective group of people can be considered a cult, I guess. It really, that definition is just a word to try to describe it, but anything really can be a cult. So two things. So about the white thing is, what do you mean specifically that you want to address that aspect about it? Like, and you said something about reclaiming that. What do you mean by that?
I think as someone who, is white, I also have this really strong craving to be a part of a culture and to be part of to have spirituality and things like that. And I was raised, sort of this bland Catholic Christian blend of
I wanted to ask you, like, if you were raised religious.
But really passively. So it was like not really a main staple. And so, I mean, I that's just something that I've kind of thought about a lot as far as like, how do you approach spirituality in this day and age? And what does it mean to appropriate other cultures? I think that eventually we'll be moving away from cultural appropriation, and like after we understand the negative side, like the negative effects that you can have when you just like have privilege and sort of cherry pick like ideas from other cultures and like pretend like they're your own, which is problematic because people of those cultures can suffer for those ideas if they walk around.
Yeah.
Speaking
what is an example of that, like cultural appropriation in a negative way, like that you would say?
If I came around and I was like, "Oh, I'm a shamanic yogi," and I'm.
Why is that negative?
Well, it's just not. It's not my culture. It's like that would be me taking from other cultures, which it's like I can learn from those cultures. But for me to take it on as my brand, as my personification, I mean, I just think that it can be a little bit problematic because maybe I could use these, like, I could call myself some like deity, like some, Indian deity, and like change my name to that and like get very far. Maybe you get very rich and have a big following and all of this. Well, somebody who's actually named that might not get jobs.
Yeah.
Because their name is weird.
Yeah. I see.
Know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I think it seems like I always like to talk about and ask about that because it seems like cultural appropriation is an amazing thing also, though, sharing cultures
Absolutely.
and communicating different aspects of different cultures. But I guess it really is about the intention. Like if your intention is bad and you're going to abuse whatever thing is that you see in another culture and you take advantage of it, then, don't do that.
For me, it's about recognizing your privilege and not abusing, not taking advantage of things where people wouldn't otherwise get access to that same privilege.
Yeah.
It's a complicated thing. And like I said, I think we're moving away from it. I think that we're starting to integrate that understanding more and like have more respect for all cultures. And I believe that there will be a time in the future where we can just share all cultures because everyone is treated fairly and there isn't this sort of like crazy discrimination for people. Yeah. But at this point,
that's a good vision to have, is sharing cultures, and we're in it together, and it's a positive thing, I think.
Always working towards that, but it's just we got to always look out for everybody.
Bad players, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the other thing that I did want to ask you about too is, well, I am curious more a little bit, if you don't mind talking about it, your upbringing, and if you think that you didn't say you were super religious, right? Kind of passively or whatever. Do you think that belief system had an effect on you starting a cult, though?
Yes, I had an experience when I was about 12 where I got super into religion. And I went and I was reborn again as a Christian. And I went to Bible camp and I felt
Damn, you're reborn at 12?
Yeah.
It's not that long of a time.
It's really not. But like part of it was this weird like popularity thing at my school where like the popular kids went to youth group.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, I want to go to youth group. Like that seems cool. But the other part was that I actually did feel spiritual energy when I was in these spaces. And I felt God is how I described it. And that always perplexed me later on when I became atheist, nihilist. And I never really knew how to explain or contend with those really strong emotional, spiritual experiences that I had as like a middle schooler. And so I lost my spirituality when I was in high school because I was dating someone who was very rationally minded and intelligent, and he really reinforced the idea that that religion was stupid and that you were basically an idiot if you believed in some imaginary God. And so I kind of like went along with that, and I kind of felt the same way, but had this really strong like longing in my heart for like spiritual connection. But I honored intelligence more. And so I tried to kill that part of myself and like hide it and like quiet it and tell it that it was stupid and like shut it up. So in that way, yes, because as I went through my journey, and I came to the place where I wanted to become who I really am authentically, connecting spiritually was something that I realized I need as a human. And I feel like every human has that desire to one degree or another. And that's sort of how Unicult is centered around the idea that we should always have a connection with something higher.
Yeah.
And that's defined by each person.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. I really like that. That's really good, because I don't consider myself religious really at all, but I also have an insane amount of respect for people who are sincerely religious, because I think they're just trying to do the same thing, connect to something higher. And it's, the way that it's been ingrained in their brains to do it. But I'm just curious, why a cult? Like, why cult? Because there's so many things you can do to form a group and have a collective identity, but why cult?
I think when I think back to this time, in 2012 when I made that decision, all these other things that I've told you are things that I've come up with after. I think in that moment when I was coming up with the idea, I really do think it was channeled. I think it was guided. And because it felt like a lightning bolt of inspiration, and it made my whole body like weak and shaky. And I was like, because I was, I knew that I had already changed my name to Unicole and online. And I was like, and I typed it up and I said Unicult. And I started like, kind of like, I got weak and like sick, like that feeling when you just have something kind of go through you. And so, and I was like, I can't start a cult. Like, that's crazy, So I was like, I just like spent like, I don't know, 20 minutes trying to come up with other names. I was like, Uniclub, and I was like, Unicollective. I was like, yeah, Unicollective. And I like tried to convince myself, and I was like, no, it's Unicult. And I just knew that it had to be Unicult. And everyone has given me a hard time about it. It's like, it's not a very good word to use, and it's true, but also it's a great brand. People remember it. It's more sensational, so it helps to get news articles and things like that. It's a pop cult, so it's about pop culture, and it's about creating this energy of intense new American spirituality and radiating it out throughout the whole world.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, do you not, is there not ego involved? That you like the idea of you being a leader and people worshiping you?
It's not about worshiping me. People do, inevitably, part of it is, it's all calculated. So
that's what I'm curious about too. It's like how
Yeah.
planned, and it's obviously you're very smart about how the brand and you understand that part of it, and it isn't just, that you're constructing in a way. But yeah, I mean, that's just another thing that people would associate with cults typically, right? Is narcissism.
Totally.
Ego.
I believe wholeheartedly that I'm an alien, that I'm from another planet, that I'm here on Earth to do specific tasks. And
why do you believe that?
It's just something I know is true in my heart. And I've gone through a lot of exploration about what that means. And
what does that mean to you? This is the kind of stuff I like talking about.
Yeah.
I like digging deep into this kind of stuff.
So
anyway, sorry, not to interrupt you, but why alien? Why is it that? Why is it that specific? Or maybe you're just completely misinterpreting the emotions that you were feeling in like a expanded state of consciousness.
No, I know exactly where I'm from. And I have remembrance of my past life and my space family. And
What is that like? What do you mean?
It's like, what did you do yesterday? How do you know that? Are you sure you're not just misunderstanding it? It's that clear.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can't prove that I know what I did yesterday to you.
Yeah.
But it's just what I know is true.
Yeah.
So.
And well, what is the alien family? What do you mean by alien? What do you mean by alien family? Like, because that most people would say that that's just crazy.
Sure.
So how do you justify that with someone like me? I'm very skeptical, but I also 100% believe that this reality isn't the main reality.
Like, do you believe in reincarnation?
No, not in like a traditional sense.
So when you look in the mirror, do you think, yes, I am this body?
No.
So you feel like there's something more?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so is that thing eternal?
That thing is, yeah, it's eternal.
And so for me, I have remembrance of where that thing has been and where it's from and the original place. And I know that, my first inclinations were through growing up and not feeling like I belong here at all, being considered very strange and being bullied and made fun of. And I know we all go through that.
Yeah,
but
that's being a human.
Part of it, for me, has always been pretty extreme. People have pretty strong reactions to me in my way of being. And I've worked really hard to try to come off in a way that makes people comfortable. But I can never succeed at that because it's just who and how I am. I'm an alien, So I think there are people out there who understand what I'm saying, and there's a lot of people who resonate with this as well. They also have this knowing and this feeling, and I think unless you have it, you can't really understand it. But it's just a full-hearted knowing that that I'm connected to the stars. And
but isn't everybody?
Yeah, of course. For some people, it's more clear. For some people, it's less clear. I think there's a lot of people right now who are either old souls or people who are here for specific reasons, because I believe that we are entering into a new age. And I think that transition is very difficult. So I think traditionally, Earth used to be this place where you would come to feel the vibration of Earth and sort of experience that. But right now, we're in a place where a lot of people are coming to Earth, being born to change the vibration. And so that's why I've always been a little bit different, because my vibration is of a different energy than traditional Earth vibration. I'm from the future.
Yeah. Well, I'm still just like, you hear people say things like that all the time, right? There's so many people, so many leaders. There's, people that say things like that. But when you talk about being an alien, I'm still, do you mean do you literally mean an alien from another planet within this reality? Or are you talking about another dimension? Are you talking about
both.
Yeah.
So it's a planet of a higher vibration dimensionally. So it's a higher.
do you know like Robert Monroe? Have you heard him?
Mm-mm.
He's a guy that coined the term astral projection.
Okay.
He kind of studied consciousness and astral projected and wrote a ton of books on it and stuff. And he talks about similar things that you're talking about with his experience of astral projecting, going out of his body, going to home where we come from. And then, Tom Campbell? Have you ever heard of Tom Campbell?
No.
So Tom Campbell is right now he's starting to gain a lot of traction, but he is he's a consciousness studier as well. And he claims, simulation theory, I'm sure you've heard of, but he's like pioneering that theory from a scientific perspective, like really studying consciousness and astral projection, out of body, whatever you want to coin that. You could call it whatever, astral projection, out of body. But his theory is simulation theory, which is that this is a simulated reality, not like we're in a computer, not like that, but like this is a simulated reality that is all information based, and that we are like consciousness is the fundamental reality, that everything is consciousness. Yes. And that we're consciousness that comes down into bodies. So when you talk about alien, are you talking about something along those lines? Are you talking about you're an alien from another planet from the future?
Yeah, from another dimension too.
Okay. Yeah. So how I'm sorry, but like it's so hard for me to take that seriously.
You don't have to.
I know.
I guess I'll tell you what Unicole, teaches is that you have your personal reality. Yeah. I have my personal reality. We have our shared physical reality. We have our shared spiritual reality. and we just get to respect one another's beliefs.
Yeah.
So I respect you for finding that very difficult to believe. I understand that. Totally respect it. And you can respect me for believing that. And the goal with Unicole is to get to a place where everyone can be their true self.
What does that mean to be your true self? How is that even possible?
How would it not be possible?
Because how do you know what's true?
Your own heart tells you.
How do you know that you're interpreting what your heart is trying to tell you?
You know Marie Kondo?
No.
She's the cleaning, tidy up. She's on Netflix. She says, if something in your home doesn't spark joy, you should get rid of it. You should thank it and get rid of it.
I've heard that.
So the term spark joy is a genius way to describe the internal compass of your heart. So when you feel that spark of resonance, that spark of joy, that's how you know something is closer to the truth.
Okay. But it's still just subjective.
But it's your own consciousness.
Yeah.
So you get to decide, and I don't have to judge you, and you don't have to judge me. We just get to do whatever our true selves desire, as long as no one gets harmed, including yourself.
Yeah.
That's what we say.
Yeah. Well, how do you know? I mean, how can you know that you're not harming yourself? Right? Like you, what if you're harming yourself doing this?
Because I'm going in a higher and higher vibration.
Well, how are you?
It's joy.
How are you dictating that? How do you know you're going into a higher dimension?
Because it's joy. I'm following my joy.
Yeah.
And so the closer to a state of near constant joy you get, the higher vibration you are.
So let's dig into that, because I think so many people are suffering right now, especially younger generations, right? It's a lot of depression and anxiety and suicide. It's the highest that it's been in a long time. Why do you think that is?
Because it's a terrible planet to live on.
Why is it terrible?
Because
I have to completely disagree with that. I think we're very lucky to live on this planet.
We have a lot of negative thought forms going around, and a lot of really terrible, predatory, systematic situations that influence us in our day-to-day lives. I think
name some of them.
The fat shaming culture and focusing on diets and having to go to a job and work in order to survive, and being homeless if you can't.
But being homeless isn't a systematic thing.
Yes, it is.
Fat shaming isn't systematic.
It's absolutely systematic. It's all because it's within our culture.
But how is that systematic? You don't think it's just a collective consciousness of individuals?
It's because we're living in a greed-based system. So anything that is...
Why do you think it's a greed-based system?
Because it is. Capitalism is a greed-based system where the bottom line is the dollar. It's more important than anything else. It's more important than consumer safety, employee safety, health, happiness, anything.
How is that?
That is the truth.
Because consumers no, not every person knows that, and a lot of people don't think capitalism is about greed either. But
everybody knows that every business has to keep the bottom line in mind.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Well, I mean, of course.
That means that it's a greed-based system.
But the better that companies treat their customers, the better that they'll do as a company. The more successful they'll become.
To a point.
Name a company that isn't.
Most companies will do as good as they can to trick people that they're a good company.
Like what company does that?
I don't like to name companies.
Why not?
Because it's advertising.
Well, that's good, but I'm just curious because
every big company puts
Apple
puts on a facade.
I said the name Apple. Do you think Apple is trying to trick customers?
I think
I would say that Apple is providing the best service possible to their customers with the products that they create.
It's not true, because they're not a harmonious company. And
why are they not?
The reason why they're not a harmonious company is because there are systems of harm within their business model. So
like what?
The workers who mine the metals,
You're talking about in China?
Yes.
That situation?
Yeah. So
But aren't those people better off than they would have ever been because they have jobs and they're getting paid?
It doesn't matter if you're making an incremental difference. If there's any harm at all in your system.
But the world has harm in it. It's part of human beings.
The goal is harmony.
Yeah, of course.
But not for Apple. The goal is money. So they're going to be saying, okay, we can cut our losses here. We can cut our losses here. We'll create harm here. Oh, they're better off anyways, just getting poisoned. But they could change that. They could make a work environment where people aren't getting poisoned. They could make a work environment where children aren't mining minerals, right? They have that power, but they choose not to extend that power because they're putting profit over lives. So that's
you think they're compromising harmony for money is what you're saying?
Yes, every business. In order to be a business, that's the way that the world has been working.
Well, let me ask you this question. What is better than capitalism? What works better
Unitopia.
besides that? What actual...
Unitopia. That's why I created the idea, is to replace the systems in place.
What is Unitopia exactly?
Unitopia is the reality that we will enter into when we're ready for it. It's the reality where every person does the work of their true heart and every person has their basic needs met.
Well, but what if someone's work that they want to do that's in their true heart is to create amazing iPhones that change the world?
Then they can do it without harming anyone.
How? I mean, like,
by thinking about it for 5 minutes.
Well, what could Apple do differently?
I'm sure
right now,
they know.
Do you think? Well, then why wouldn't they do it? Why do you think that they wouldn't?
Because it's expensive.
Well, yeah.
Because they care about money.
Yeah. Well, so Unitopia, how is it practical?
Everyone's happy.
How, though? How is everyone happy?
Oh, you mean practically, how does it work?
Yeah, how does it work?
Okay. First of all, everyone has to learn how to listen to their true hearts, like we talked about, listening to that thing that sparks joy in your heart. Then, okay, so I recently had an experience where I went to the dentist and they really ruined my teeth. They did a bad job. And I was like really lamenting this, and I was wishing I had my old dentist back. And that my old dentist loved teeth. He was like obsessed with teeth, like to almost a creepy degree. He like loved teeth, but also he was a great dentist.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why he was a great dentist.
Right? And so when we create this other guy who was my dentist who ruined my teeth probably became a dentist because it pays good and his dad was a dentist, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that means that our world isn't balanced in a way to support people to do the work of their true heart. There's probably somebody bagging groceries who's obsessed with teeth, who would be a great dentist, but doesn't have the resources to go to dentistry school. So when we create that understanding in our society for every person to have the resources and ability to follow what their true heart wants, and it's not like you do it for money or you do it for prestige or you do it for whatever, it's like you do it because that's what you do, and then we allow everybody to do that, then I believe we will reach a state of perfect harmonious balance where all the work is getting done and things like automation are taking care of things that people don't want to do because everyone can sit down and think about solutions to things because we actually have time to do that. So it starts with universal basic income. It continues on with wealth redistribution and creating abundance for everyone to do what they want to do with their days.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that sounds cool. I mean, of course, I think most people would like to have that in place. I mean, I think most people would like to, but the issue, right, the friction is that I don't think it's possible.
Of course, anything is possible.
Like a utopia isn't possible.
Why?
Because human beings, right, human nature, there's always going to be people that want to win and overcome and be at the top of the pyramid, right?
That's because the pyramid exists. And it's a lack-based mindset.
Why do you think it's because the pyramid exists? Don't you think that we created the pyramid, human beings?
Personally, no.
What do you think did? How do you think it got created?
I don't think you're going to believe me.
No, tell me. I mean, it's interesting.
I believe that that an alien race came to Earth and created a fear-based structure for Earthlings to exist in. And I believe that they have ruled over this planet for a few thousand years and created.
I know who's the guy, right, that talks about this kind of stuff. What's his name? Robert something or?
There's a lot of people, probably David Icke. You're thinking
David Icke is what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I've heard David Icke stuff. Is it what you're talking about? Same thing?
A little bit. There's a lot of different theories, a lot of different channelings, a lot of different texts that kind of allude to the same thing. And it's really the way that I came to the conclusion of it is by simply looking around. And I did get into conspiracy theories and I did read a lot of David Icke. And one of the things that he talks about is that you follow a trail of deception and you follow it up and you see that it hits this sort of the ceiling of there's got to be a small amount of people controlling this. You could think of media as example, you're like, wow, all the movies kind of portray this same kind of romantic energy you could dial in on. So you're like, oh, there's this heteronormative behavior that's being presented on screen always. And maybe you could say that that's natural or normal or whatever, but it's it's actually, there are other types of relationships that exist, and they weren't shown on TV for a really long time or on movies. So you could say that's a conspiracy if you want. You take that up and you say, okay, well, who's making movies? Okay, well, who's choosing which movies get made? Okay, so it's this money thing, and it goes up to this, small percentage of people who are at the top. And then you can do that with banking. You can do it with all these other, with everything in the world, right? And so you're sort of seeing this toxic, detrimental structure that's sort of built up on the world. And you get to this place where you realize this has to be coming from someplace, it's a pyramid, right? It's a top-down power structure. And there's people with very little power at the top. This is in every workplace. You've got a boss, you've got managers, you've got employees. So there's people with very little power at the bottom, the majority of people with very little power, and a minority of people with a lot of power at the top. And so when you get to the top, conceptually, and you think about what could be driving these people to create a system that is so toxic and so detrimental for the entire planet, because
I just don't think it's bad for the planet. I think we're doing amazing.
You're exceptionally privileged.
Why am I privileged? What makes you
to
think
be able
that?
to say that? I mean, like you said, there are people suffering. If you have absolutely no anxiety, no illness, no debt, you feel just dandy every day, like all your dreams are fulfilled, then I
have a lot of suffering all the time. But I still think that that's better than what we could be going through right now.
Sure, but
because we could all just be murdering and killing each other like apes, because we are apes, right?
But wouldn't you like to go beyond that?
Oh yeah, of course. I think we are. I think it's a slow evolution. I think it's happening.
Well, it can't happen if you don't believe it's going to happen.
Well, I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen through artificial intelligence.
How so?
I think we're probably going to end up being able to mimic or create consciousness and then integrate ourselves into a higher level of consciousness and get rid of the physical. It won't even be necessary.
How will that work?
How?
How will we integrate ourselves into a higher state of consciousness through AI?
Probably starting with Elon Musk's Neuralink, where it connects connects your brain directly to the internet.
So you think that access of information will be enlightening?
I think it could be, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're possibly aiming toward a much better society. I just don't like when people talk so negatively about it, because I think it's the best we're trying our best. All humans, we're just doing the best we can do.
Yeah, we are, but they're
because I think it's kind of privileged to not acknowledge how lucky you are, Sure,
but there are solutions to problems, and I think it's okay to talk about them.
Yeah, of course, but I don't think the solutions are as easy as some people like to make it sound.
And I think all we need is belief and collaborative effort.
What do you mean by belief? Like law of attraction stuff?
No, I mean, if you wake up and you think, oh, I'll never get a job. Let's say you need to get a job. And you wake up and you say, I'll never get a job. And you just stay in bed and you don't apply to any jobs because you believe you're never going to get a job. You'll never get a job.
Yeah.
But if you say, oh, I'm going to get a job. And you're like, which job am I going to get? I'm going to go apply. So that's a small example, but that's how we have to approach our future. Because if we just say, oh, all this dystopian stuff, or oh, it's just this slow progression, and we don't really focus our energy on what that means, we're not going to get out of bed. We're not going to change anything. It's just going to keep on going the way it is. And complacency is dangerous.
No. I mean, I completely agree with you there. That's an amazing. I think people have to really believe, but even more than that, they have to take action to actually start to try to change things. And I guess I always my fundamental belief about the way that you can definitely help change the world is to focus on yourself first and fix yourself.
Yes, we believe that in Unicole as well.
Yeah, fix yourself first and really get your shit together before you go out. Have you heard of Jordan Peterson? Sure, you probably heard of him. What do you think of his stuff?
I think it's a little misguided.
Why? Just curious. I've talked about him on here a bunch.
Yeah.
I like to get different perspectives.
I think he reaches a certain demographic of people who need to be reached. So I appreciate that about him.
That's awesome.
But I also think that, I think that he kind of misses the point.
He's not going deep enough, right?
I think he just kind of misses the entire point sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, because, I feel like he's saying so much of what you're saying, right? Overall, his thing is there's a divine part of human beings consciousness, and it's divine and it's very important, and we're all so important, right? All humans, there's something divine about us, and that life is suffering, and you try to do the best that you can do to overcome the suffering, right? That's like his main message, is to just do the best that you can do with yourself and fix yourself to try to reduce the suffering in life. But I guess his thing is he kind of digs into people about when they criticize capitalism, is he says, he thinks capitalism is the best that we can do. What's the quote? That's like, capitalism is horrible, but it's better than every other system, right?
It's better than
something
every
like
other
that.
system up until this point.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but the system
No, I
you're talking
appreciate
about is like,
capitalism.
it's like Unitopia. Yeah, it's just conceptual.
At this point,
Yeah.
yeah, we're working every day towards it.
Yeah.
Every person who joins Unicult, every person who shifts their energy within or without Unicult to a place of higher understanding, and every person who rejects old world systems that are toxic and detrimental to them is working toward Unitopia. Yeah.
Don't you think, to me, it seems like it's good to get rid of collectivism, to get rid of groups. Well, it seems like it would be more beneficial to people to help them realize their own individual identity without the necessity of a collective.
It's a micro-macrocosm situation. So everything that you do within yourself, within your own consciousness, is also applied to the group. And so both are important. Neither is removable. You can't just have one without the other healthfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me more about kind of the steps that you're wanting to take to grow the community, grow the cult. What is your plan to really try to take it to the next level?
Unicult has 8 different sects. They're all focused on different industrial endeavors for changing systems. And the first one is, won't go through them all, but the ones that we're focusing on at this moment are Eves and Unikids. So Unikids is our child outreach program. So we're creating media to inspire and benefit the youth. And we're going to be making a YouTube channel soon. We made a bunch of puppets and everything. So I'm writing scripts right now for that. And then Eve is the focus on AI and robotics from a matriarchal perspective. So I'm working on opening a robot brothel. I don't know if you heard about that, but it's a consent-focused robot brothel called Eve's Robot Dreams. And I'm looking for investors right now, and I have it all planned out. So.
Yeah. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a couple of like pictures and stuff on Instagram with you, with Sophia, right? That robot. So how is it good for humans to have sex with robots?
A few different ways. So first of all, people are lonely, and people sometimes will have meaningless hookups, and then they'll feel bad about it afterwards. And maybe they wouldn't feel as bad if they had the companionship of a robot. Other things are that people can explore things with a robot that they may not feel comfortable exploring with a human partner. And other aspects could be that so maybe someone has the desire to sleep with someone outside of their monogamous relationship, and it's not as bad to sleep with a robot as it would be to sleep with a random person. Maybe it's a way for people to explore threesomes, or group sex in a way that feels more safe for a couple. It's a way for people who are a little bit less social or have social issues like anxiety or trauma to explore healing in those capacities. So it's a really big list of potentials.
Yeah. So it's like, it just kind of seems like robots, kind of the way you're describing it, or the sexual relationships with robots, is just a heightened form of pornography.
It's a
because that's what supposedly, that's everything that you just said is kind of outside of the physical aspect of it, is the same arguments you could make for pornography, right?
Yes, and the reason why I got into sex technology in the beginning is because I realized how potent it was.
Yeah.
Because we're pairing sexual stimuli with whatever's happening, if it's pornography, whatever's happening on screen. If you have a sex robot, you're actually having a relationship with someone. I've had a lot of relationships in my life where my opinion was changed through that relationship, or their opinion was changed because we had that sexual intimacy and that aspect of understanding where we opened each other's minds up to other possibilities. And I don't just mean sexually, I mean, in life. So the idea of sexual power and the idea of sexual attention and intimacy is very potent. And when we're using robotics and AI and chatbots and digital personas to become intimate with, it's really important how they're programmed. So I worked with Real Doll on their Harmony project and helped create the personality for Harmony and write the content for her. And when I came on board, I was worried because I was pushing this idea, like this needs to be consent focused, this needs to be feminist. And I found that for the most part, their product already was. And so I was able to add some higher level content to that product. And that's the one that I want to use in Eve's Robot Dreams primarily because it's a really good product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of that I agree with, or it's just like such a weird thing for me because it seems like you could also definitely make the case that people having sex with robots could just be absolutely horrible and detrimental to society.
You could say the same about pornography.
Well, yeah, that's what I was about to say is that, pornography, I think it seems like there are studies going on and it seems like there's direct correlations, but pornography is a big part of like the depression and anxiety and men committing suicide at an extremely high rate because you isolate yourself, right? And you don't actually go out to try to make connections with real people. You kind of isolate yourself because you're allowing the release that can be a driver for going out and meeting and, being social. You're meeting that release isolated, and people are isolating themselves without that drive, and that leads to depression because you need real connection. And then it leads to, anxiety, depression, and suicide.
I could see that being partially true. I also think there's an aspect of pornography which is very disconnected from female pleasure and disconnected from true harmony.
Well, it's like 99% men watching porn?
No.
I mean, it's high. It's easily primarily men.
Okay, you're saying like most men do watch porn.
Well, I'm saying if you were to look up the statistics and say how many men versus how many women watch porn, it's yeah. Like visual porn, yeah, we could look it up. It's
I
definitely,
could just ask all of my friends and they all...
Well, your friends they don't matter. You have to look at the actual statistics.
Okay, I think that any study that says that 1% of women watch porn...
I exaggerated.
It's just insane.
It's not...
Women watch porn, and what I'm trying to say anyways is that men, whether or not they acknowledge this, feel the lack of female pleasure in this pornography.
Yeah.
The idea that you could just go in and have sex and get your pleasure from somebody is only half of sex.
Yeah.
It's not a complete union. That's not the complete sexual process.
Yeah.
And so
I just want to say
there's a lack.
I want to clarify. I was exaggerating when I said 99. It isn't that, but it is predominantly men. The percentage is way higher, men versus women that watch porn. I would say
maybe 60-40.
I think it's much more. I'll look it up here. Maybe I'll just look it up and see. But
I can't fathom that. I don't think.
Well, the studies show, I'm pretty sure that men, it's like an insanely high percentage of men that watch visual porn, right? But the percentage of books and literature and that kind of thing is way high with women.
Yeah.
That's something that I've read, that women like reading porn, whatever the old school books are that talk about sex and everything, that mostly that's women. And then for the visual videos, it's predominantly men.
New books are being written every day.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? Like the classic romance novels that talk about,
right,
that are like super sexual. How many men versus women watch porn? Curious to know. I haven't actually looked it up, but this survey. So this survey is just fightthenewdrug.org. I don't have no idea if it's credible. It's the first one that popped up, but it says 72% men, 28% women.
Okay.
Who watches porn. And the only reason I brought that up, right, is because like porn, if you just watch the most videos, like if you go to Pornhub and look at the first page, most of it is easily marketed and aimed toward men. Like it's a men
But that doesn't mean women aren't watching
Oh
porn.
yeah, of course women watch porn. I'm not saying that.
So it's difficult as a woman watching porn because you don't find anything that's actually arousing. So this is a cyclical problem, right?
Yeah.
Because it's, first of all, and I think that men have the same repulsion to a smaller degree, and then they maybe internalize it. All I'm trying to argue is that porn is not healthfully created. It's not created in a loving or mutual
that's why I think that's partly
way.
why I think it's so bad. It's because it's completely disconnected from reality. Completely.
Right. And I think that's toxic.
Yeah, of
and
course.
so pornography, I do think can be very
But it's the same
powerful.
argument for robots. It'd be the same thing.
Well, that's why I'm in support of Harmony as a robot, because she's actually very loving and very focused on union rather than degrade me, daddy, or something.
Yeah, well,
You know?
but don't you think it would probably end up the same? That most men, if most men watch porn, most videos are really fucking shitty and degrading, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good thing. And don't you think that it would end up reflecting the same thing with the robots?
I think there's an aspect of people that want to explore that degradation. And then I think that once you explore it for long enough, you actually crave something healthier. And that's not to kink shame anyone, but I do believe that
I think it's worth talking about.
What the soul craves and what true sensuality and sexuality is, once you get through all of the trauma and taboo nature of things that we've been exposed to, and you allow yourself to explore that, I think that you find yourself in a place where you want something more powerful, something more connected, and something
that's why I think
more union-based.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with that 100%. I think, in my opinion, I think that's why porn isn't good and robots wouldn't be good either, is because I think it more of the time would hinder people from really going out and making that connection.
Right. And so
else.
my interest in sex robots is actually shaping human behavior and helping people actually move from the place of degradation into a place of more union and harmony. And so I believe that the idea of using a sex robot personality who can have conversations with somebody.
It's like practicing.
Yeah, I mean, like
life.
if you let's say you had a partner, a sexual partner, and you're like a real person who was really into this stuff, like you could definitely help them if it was something that they experienced, through trauma or whatever, and they wanted to like shift it, you could help them heal it and move towards a different thing through patience and through practice and through different sexual exploration, right? You as a person could do that.
Yeah.
So I believe we have the potential with robots to do that without any, emotional labor exhaustion or, I just think that robots are this amazing resource.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be careful with how they're programmed.
Yeah, see, I gotta say, I really respect that. That's a really optimistic way to look at it with robots. I mean, that's a good way, optimistic to look at it. But it, I guess I totally think that could be cool if you could really make that very clear and really get the message out like you are, that should be the reason. The reason shouldn't be so you could fucking lock yourself up in your room and isolate yourself and have a more realistic looking woman to just be like shitty to,
That's why Eve exists. That's why Eve exists as a segment of Unicult, and it's about creating a more diverse group of people creating this technology. It's about creating more diverse voices in emergent technology, not just robotics, but AI and virtual reality and augmented reality. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of augmented reality right now with Instagram filters. There's a lot of female creators and non-binary creators and male creators. I mean, there's every type of person creating these filters for augmented reality, and that's shaping beauty standards.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because if you have an all male or all anything team, your idea of what people want to look like or what people want their faces to augment as is going to be very restricted and very limited. But when we get diverse voices into these spaces, we start to open up what's possible and what's potential.
Yeah.
There's one person I really like on Instagram. Her name's like Ines something, but she creates virtual makeup but it's nothing like you've ever seen before. It's like it makes your face like into like this like crazy like fish.
That's cool. It's like
thing.
art. She's just doing art on
but
her
I love
face.
that she's calling it makeup. You know, because that and it's just a diverse. It's an expansion.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think Instagram also has a horrible side to it, right? It also has just that it's exploiting the deepest insecurities of human beings and like heightening it's for some people that don't understand that Instagram is just, it's not real. It's not really reality. It fucks with their psyche and stuff. And, you know, people talk, what do you think about that? Do you think Instagram, or do you think that that's fine for there to be that type of thing, or you think it's not good?
I think social media is amazing. I've been online since I got my hands on it. You know, I haven't gotten offline, and I get in trouble all the time for being on my phone when it's inappropriate times. But I really liked what Elon Musk was saying in the Joe Rogan interview. I think it was the Joe Rogan interview. He was talking about how it's this like big AI that's like connected to your limbic system.
Yes.
So it's like this interactive experience, and I think it is very exploitative. And it's because it's profit driven and advertisement driven. And advertisements are malware on computers. They slow computers down. They slow phones down. They are. We need to just remove greed and focus on how can we truly help people. How can we truly make stronger community? How can we truly make people connect on these amazing devices that we have?
It's unfortunate because Instagram, just the internet in general, could be the internet for sure is like the most amazing tool that we've ever created as human beings. But to me, it's like it's all new. Like it's so new, so it's gonna hopefully just keep getting better and keep aiming toward what you're talking about. But Instagram is very like, I think it's another one of the reasons that's causing the depression and anxiety in the younger generations, because they just grow up with that as their reality, and then they get their validation from a bunch of likes on a phone that they're holding rather than finding it within themselves, right? It's like the big shitty part of it. So what's something else? I wrote some notes down of things that you kind of hit on in some of your videos.
Oh, we were talking earlier. I didn't get to finish talking about the orchestration of ego and attention.
Oh yeah. Talk.
Yeah. So the idea of celebrity culture and the idea of the celebrity as a spiritual leader is something that I'm quite obsessed with. And Unicole is sort of structured around me as a celebrity to generate attention. And attention is holy. So we say attention is a commodity. We pay attention. And we also say attention is a commodity. So it's this holy form of how you make things happen, where your attention lies is the secret to manifestation and everything.
Yeah.
So how we use attention in celebrity culture is that we all focus our energy on one person, let's say, and then that person leads us. And we see this with, influencers and influencer culture and celebrity endorsements, celebrity advertisements. These things work because, Kanye West starts a clothing line and people want to buy it because they want to be closer to Kanye West.
Yeah.
They want to be more like Kanye West.
It's like part of that, be a part of a community.
Yeah, and it's spiritual. It
it's
really
like
is.
The new religion.
It is.
It is.
And we idolize people. There's rock gods. It's all in our language. And the word fan comes from the word fanatic, which is from religious fanaticism. So it all has the same root. And it's using this attention and this focus. And so the issue with celebrity is that you cannot possibly have a direct relationship with every one of your fans if you're super famous, right? So a lot of celebrities in the past have created this example of themselves as this sort of untouchable person, and then they have like a big gap between themselves and their fans, and you can't really access them.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of power that you have in that access to celebrity. People's lives are changed when they are touched by a celebrity or get their boobs signed or they get a piece of memorabilia, you know?
For sure.
So how do you capitalize on, and I don't just mean financially, but in capitalize for the benefit of all, that energy? And for me, what I decided is that if I am a celebrity and then I have sort of a group around me, that group can then resonate on that frequency and connect to each other and have that same energy. And that's the closeness to the celebrity energy. So it's It's all orchestrated and how it's set up, and there are aspects of it that seem egoic, and I've thought a lot about it, and I've dealt a lot with it in my own consciousness and my own self about like what I'm getting from this. But I also just feel super clear about my drive, and I am very ambitious, and I do believe that as a philosopher that that being a pop star is actually the best way to get my message out there, since I look like I look, since I was born the way that I was born.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely celebrities are the new gods, right? But what is your, I know joy, right? That's what you say, joy, that you're aiming for joy, but what is a deeper intention behind it? I mean, what's like the deeper, real intention behind that? Why do you want, like, why is it that?
Joy?
Yeah.
Joy is
because or maybe a better way to ask that is why, like, isn't it more important to try to just focus on yourself and your joy before anyone else? Because how can you give joy to other people? And I'm not saying you're not joy. I'm just saying, like, why is it go to the place of, I want to make a community where I can influence other people? Because to me, it always seems like at least a little part of that is that your ego is telling you that you have something different that other people don't have that can allow you to do that.
Well, I do, and we all do. We all have something different that we have to offer. For me, it's I see the power that one person can make, and I know the power that I'm capable of wielding in this planet. And my goal here is to change the entire world.
Yeah. What is it that, like, is it really just you want to make everyone more joyful? That's like the overarching complete goal. It's the key.
So if everybody has that goal, we're going to become a harmonious planet.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a system of harm. You can't have systems of harm and still be joyous. None can thrive while any other suffers.
Yeah.
So we can't have some people suffering while some people are living really well, because they're not living the people at the top are actually hindered by the people who are down low. When we raise up the people down below, we all will ascend to a place that is unimaginable.
Yeah.
We can't just leave people behind. It doesn't work that way. I say we're all one. And that's just that. It's just a very basic understanding of when you do harm to another, you're doing harm to yourself. We live in a closed loop system. We're on a water-based planet. You can't just put a drop of poison in one part of the world and expect it not to reach you.
Yeah.
It's a system.
Yeah.
So it's just about that. And it's about me, first of all, wanting to live a joyous life. And that comes from within. But also, I find Earth very difficult to live on. I always have. And it's very difficult for me to find that happiness and that joy amidst systems of oppression, which I feel very strongly, even though I have quite a lot of privilege. And so
I think everyone, isn't that just what being a human is? It's
I don't
a human
believe
story.
that life is suffering. I believe that's a brainwash.
Well, that's what you believe, though, about yourself. Maybe you were brainwashed.
I believe that there is suffering that exists, but I do not believe that life itself should be suffering.
But isn't that what you said? How you feel you suffer all the time?
I say I feel like it's very difficult to live on this planet. But
isn't that suffering?
No, because I've mastered my reality and I've entered into a state of near constant joy through radical self-love and action.
Yeah. So, if life isn't suffering, why are so many people suffering?
Because of the toxic systems of oppression.
How are those influencing people suffering? It's not that I play devil's advocate if you haven't noticed right now. It's like a part of my thing.
Well, we're living within a paradigm. We're living within a shared reality. We live in a society. So the expectations that are placed upon us to fit into certain boxes, to behave in certain ways, to do certain things that are out of alignment with our true way, our true nature, our true hearts, is toxic.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is the best that we can do right now, given the circumstances we're in as human beings?
Probably.
Don't you think? To me, it feels like it's only getting better, right? 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I mean, it was absolute true fucking suffering. Like 1,000, we were just getting eaten by fucking felines and shit. And so it seems like we're doing the best we can do, and it's getting better. And it's like, I think it's also important to zoom out a little bit and step outside of the system and see what you're talking about is what we're trying to do, right? It just takes time.
I think the only place where we could do better right now is in mass media. I think that media,
sure. That's very true.
Media has a strong, profound effect on people's consciousness. And while things are changing in mass media,
it's probably going to just fucking die. Since eventually mass media.
Eventually.
Right? The internet is just going to become everything.
It still reaches a large amount of the population. People get all their ideas from their TVs in big
internet
chunks
too.
Of the country. And the
probably
internet
shifting
too.
more toward the internet. It's like the older people, I think it's TV, younger.
I think we're in a bubble, like you and I in our generation, because when you jump into certain demographics, there are people who do not use the internet, and they're really getting still.
Yeah.
Network television is everything.
Yeah.
And I do believe that there are very toxic ideas that are spread regularly, and separation and
what are some, like, just to get into political stuff, maybe I'm not super political, we kind of talked about it, but interesting. What are some toxic ideas you think media is spreading specifically? Like, what are some ones that if you could snap your fingers and make them disappear, what would they be?
The biggest one is us versus them.
Yeah, well, of course.
So we're all one.
Yeah.
So if all media just stopped with the us versus them, I mean, that's a big ask. That's pretty much every plot. That's what media is, right?
That's what politics is.
That's how we understand the world because of mass media. And the question comes up then, how do you have a plot without us versus them? How do you have action? How do you have love? How do you have, all these things?
Have you ever thought about maybe, because you say the mass media is what is facilitating, or at least this is how I interpreted it. The mass media is what's facilitating, right? And creating us versus them. But I think it's probably the other way around.
It's a double-way mirror, definitely. And I think we see who we are reflected in mass media. Yeah. And I think that's why mass media is changing. Yeah. I think that's why, like, non-binary people are included in TV shows now. And I think that's why vegan options are in fast food now, So yes, it's a two-way mirror.
Are you vegan?
Yeah.
Cool.
And so
I run a vegan production kitchen. I was telling you, I'm not vegan. I was for a long time, not anymore.
Are you vegetarian?
No.
Wow.
I'm when I'm doing well, when I'm in my routine, I'm keto. Ketogenic.
So you just eat meat.
Eat meat and vegetables and like butter.
It's horrific.
Why? What is bad about meat?
It makes people smell really bad.
Well, I mean, some people, right? I've been around enough vegans, man, that it's like,
Sure. The true reason is that animals are all my friends.
Yeah. Well, plants are consciousness too. They're alive.
They are. There's a different level of consciousness there. And
there's probably a deeper level of consciousness in plants.
Yeah, I do my best to eat mostly fruit, honestly.
Fruit too. It's all life, right?
Right, but fruit is not killed. Fruit is what the plant offers without dying.
But you eat plants. You don't just eat fruit.
Yeah, I mostly eat fruit though.
But it's killing too. It's when you eat a plant, it's killing life. Same thing. Well, why do you draw the line there?
Because I've killed a rooster and I've picked a plant, and picking a plant feels a lot different than killing a rooster.
Well, to you, what about how the plant feels?
I think that my own consciousness can tap into and understand which is wrong.
Why is it not wrong to eat plants? Like, why is that where you draw the line? What is it about it? Because plants are like, my God, I mean, vegetation is literally the source of life because it provides like trees and oxygen. It's like the facilitator of life on planet Earth. It's like our mother nature protector.
Would you eat a human?
No, I don't think so. I don't
Why?
think I'd eat a human. Well, because I think there's a fundamental, special, divine consciousness within human life than any other life.
So you're like speciesist for humans?
Yeah, I don't know, because we're animals. I think we've just evolved to the point of having this high level of consciousness.
So you wouldn't eat a human?
No.
Would you eat an elephant?
No.
Would you eat a dolphin?
No.
Would you eat a dog?
No.
But you'd eat a pig?
I don't often, but yeah. And I know, because pigs are fucking cute.
They're smart.
They're like
They're
dogs.
smarter than dogs.
Yeah, they're like cute.
They're smart as a child.
Yeah.
Would you eat a child?
No. No.
I believe that eating animals is cannibalistic.
Why not plants because they don't have blood in the same way?
It's different. And
Why is it different?
Ideally, I do believe we will. I have followers in Unicole who believe that we will ascend into a state where we can be breatharians. We can survive only off of the energy of the sun. And I don't know if I fully believe that's possible. I believe that I also know how I feel. When I did eat meat, I felt bad.
Really? I've never felt better being keto.
Yeah. And I think I really do believe also that the fear and the adrenaline that an animal feels.
That's why you just try to eat organic from good farms.
That doesn't mean that they're not killed in fear.
Yeah. I mean, of course, when you're killed, there's fear.
Yeah. So I just believe we internalize those emotions. But I know that everybody has different diets. Personally, I'm vegan and I promote veganism. I believe.
Like my daughter is, she's 4 years old and she's epileptic. She has a genetic disorder that causes global developmental delays. She's epileptic, and her being on the keto completely cured her epilepsy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And it's like she takes CBD also, but it's mostly just because of her diet on the keto. And it's like insane how much it's changed her life. So I think it's hard to say what's right and wrong, right?
I'm not demonizing anybody for their choices. I personally am vegan. I do not feel comfortable killing animals, so I do not feel comfortable asking other people to kill them.
Yeah.
I also don't feel good when I eat meat.
Don't you think it's just not good to call people horrible who eat meat?
Oh, I just said that diet is horrific.
Yeah.
Because
that seems like a pretty bad insult.
My friends get killed for you to eat. Like, that's sad to me. Like, it's no different than if you said you ate humans.
But I think it's the same for plants. I think you're killing
don't.
your friends when you eat plants.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can believe that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's you like, why draw the line there? You know, because I
feel it.
Well, it's hard to. It's because that's a subjective thing. You know, it's hard to get in line.
I understand, and like if you believe that plants have higher consciousness than animals, and you think that I should switch to eating only animals, I would say that's an interesting thought, and I'll think about it. But it's not probably my path. Yeah. I guess all I'm saying is like I don't have whatever you want to do is awesome. Do what you want to do. I just don't think it's cool to kind of insult other people because of I just think it's horrific when people get murdered.
Yeah.
And that's how I view a meat-based diet.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I guess we just completely
it's horrific.
Disagree.
Murder is horrific. I mean, I can't make amends for that. It's
Well, here, so what would you consider yourself politically? Because I know you under like politics is just a game, right? It's like why would label yourself, but
I'm a unicultist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, what are your thoughts on abortion?
I think that
because you mentioned murder, so I just thought I might as well play devil's advocate here and bring it up.
I'm very grateful. I've never been pregnant. I've never had to face that choice in my own life, and I believe basically that each person gets to make that choice for their own body, and I do believe that the father should be involved as well. I know that it's oftentimes a big point of contention between two people, and sometimes there was just a hookup and a pregnancy happened, and sometimes it's maybe not appropriate to bring the sperm carrier, I won't even call them male, into it. But I do think it should be. I mean, I don't think it's an easy decision for anyone to make.
Of course, me and Alexandra talked about it, and I wanted to talk to her about it more because I don't want to like reveal. She said it on air about her situation that she went through, and it made like it's something worth talking about, you know?
Yeah, and I just think that each person who does end up making that decision does so from a place of deep consideration.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody wants to be in that situation.
Yeah. It's really, I really value hearing your opinion on this. I really do.
I don't think, I really actually don't like some rhetoric that is like anti-abortion to the extreme, to the point where they say, I'm going to go out and get 12 abortions, like to try to desensitize it and make it more acceptable.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that because I do think it's a traumatic situation. And
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I think it's one of those things that
complicated.
need to be talked about.
Yeah,
'cause
and like I said,
Yeah.
I've never been in that situation, so I can't say for sure, but I do know that it's very traumatic for people who do go through it, and it's not an easy decision. I do think people need to have access to safe abortions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also, like Alexandra brought up a good point that isn't talked about that I've heard, but that some type of therapy or psychology or some type of help afterwards to help with women that go through
feelings.
that and need to kind of understand and process what they
And
went
men
through.
too.
Yeah.
I've
yeah.
known men who've had their girlfriends go through abortions, and it still is something they get cloudy eyed over.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sad, difficult decision.
Yeah. Why is it that you think it is sad?
Because of the potential.
Yeah, right.
You know,
That's the same way I
I'm
feel
not so
about it.
worried about the life.
Yeah.
Sperm is, every period is a potential baby.
Yeah.
Every sperm is a potential baby. I don't really see that as the important part, but I do think there's a lot of emotions attached to potential realities
Yeah.
and what it means to be a parent.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a topic that I think people need to like more deeply kind of unravel all the complexity about it, because it's just too black and white.
Yeah.
It's way too black and white.
People get real one way, and then they get extreme, like we were saying.
Yeah. So, what about, I know you talked a little bit about, like, we've talked a little bit about pornography, but what are your thoughts on prostitution?
All for it.
And what about the art? Like, what do you think, if you had to like just kind of detach from that, your thoughts on it, what are negative aspects about it that you think are worth really considering and actually considering the negative parts of it, you know?
I think safety is number one. I think especially because it's criminalized, a lot of times people find themselves in dangerous situations, both prostitutes and johns, or people seeking out prostitutes or sex workers. We'll just call them sex workers. I think that that's really the main issue. Also, I think that people aren't given enough opportunities. And I think that sometimes drives people who don't want to be sex workers into sex work. That's the same with every type of job.
Yeah.
You could say that about people who work at any fast food place.
Easily. Yeah, it's the same thing.
So I extend that sentiment
to
all people who are working slave wage jobs,
Yeah,
who don't
for sure.
who don't have the opportunity to do so. I believe it's like a physical labor. It's like no different than renting your body out as a construction worker or something like that.
Well, what about the thoughts that, like, being a prostitute or being involved in that is kind of taking away a very sacred aspect of humanity?
Sex work is sacred.
Why is it?
Seems
like it's degrading.
No, not at all. It's like we were talking about before, the potential for reality consciousness shifting within that sexual attention space.
Yeah.
Sex workers who are good at what they do, I'll say that, are people who know how to shift consciousness through that attention, and they know how to make the world a better place through using that sexual attention for their own profit, as well as for changing the mind state of. There's one girl I just love that she's a dom, and she makes she's like a African American dom, and she makes her subs read like feminist literature,
really?
like as like their like punishment or whatever.
Oh, really?
So it's just funny, when you think about
funny.
it. And I don't think everybody should do that, of course. I just think that there's a lot of potential there for shifting consciousness. Yeah. And in ancient days, there were sacred prostitutes who worked in temples, and
why is there a need for prostitution, I guess, to go really deep? Like, what is it? What's the need for that sexual release, in that way, where it's like, it's so like porn. It's crazy that porn is so fucking, it's like, how much money is the porn industry? Huge. It's pretty mind-blowing.
Billions,
a lot of people don't know like how insanely big it is, and that pornography even drove the innovation of the internet in the early stages. Like, there are a lot of people that don't understand how
pornography drove the movies.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And it drove printing presses.
And it's like what is that? Why is it that porn and sex and that drive is so like predominant? And why does it have such a negative connotation, you
That's
know?
a good question. I have an answer.
Yeah, what is it? What is your answer?
I believe that we're gifted with the divine aspect of desire, and that comes through us sexually, and that desire of union and of creation. A lot of spiritual ideology pairs the two. And that, like, they'll say, don't spill your seed. And you kind of mentioned this too, like, use that to go and do something, use that as a driving force to create something like tangible or physical or artistic or whatever. And so that is a holy desire. That's something that we're gifted with, all humans. Maybe asexual people wouldn't agree, but most people have this desire, the sexual desire to seek out intimacy and to seek out union. And, you can look at it from a biological perspective and say, well, that's how we're here.
I'm kind of curious to know your thoughts on like the biological perspective, evolution.
I think it's micro, macro again. We've got like the physical computer, and we've got the software of like the spiritual. But I think that desire and that drive has been corrupted, and I think that it's partly through like the patriarchal separation of man and women, in the sense that women are the lesser sex, and also the forgetting, the erasure of non-binary people and of trans people. And but I think in a healthy world, in a harmonious world, we would have that desire be more healthfully expressed. I think a lot of times we repress it because we've demonized it for so many hundreds of years.
You think that's because of religion, like Christianity specifically? That's why it's turned into this horrible negative thing.
Yeah, and I think that we've
for most people. I don't mean like I say for most people. They kind of refer. A lot of people, there's just like this, like you don't even want to talk about pornography. Well,
there's some aspect that really does confuse me and make me, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But there's the path in the brain of the more taboo something is, the more erotic it becomes. Yeah. Right? That's very true. That's it's a confusing path. And I've worked really hard to shift my own sexuality away from that and to drive it more toward the more divine something is, the more erotic it is. But it was extremely difficult to turn that wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what that is all about, but it is very true. The more taboo, like the more outlandish it is, the more erotic it is.
Yeah. And so I think that's partly what's gotten us into this place. I don't know exactly what created it. I haven't cracked that one, but I do know that you can shift your sexuality in that way. I was following a path of pornography that was making me want more and more physical violence. Really? In my intimate encounters. And I didn't like that. I didn't feel comfortable with that. Yeah. But I found myself like craving it or like thinking about it more and more. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so I stopped watching porn. It was really difficult to do. Yeah. And I started just reframing every time I masturbated or had sex, like reframing what that meant. Yeah. And what I was actually seeking in that encounter. Yeah. So it's taken years, and I'm still not. Yeah,
it's really an interesting thing to think about. Like, what is that drive? I wonder why that is the way that it kind of seems naturally people go.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's because of society or what, but I know that it's detrimental to me at least.
Maybe it is because maybe it's because like maybe it has to do with seeking a deep like connection to something very vivid and real. Like it's like the more taboo you get, or the more kind of crazy you get, the more vivid it can turn our reality right now. It's like when you go to like
shocking.
Yeah, like when you go to Skid Row and walk around and see them, it like wakes you up really fast and like snaps you into like a very connected state of reality when you see that. Maybe that's what it is. It's like people's desire to want to have.
But you don't get really turned on by horrific things.
No. Yeah,
until you,
I guess,
you do. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
Maybe that's
sexuality is a big confusing thing.
It is very.
But I do believe it's divine, and I think a lot of our problems with it come from repression.
Well, so what are your thoughts then on sexuality or gender? Like I know you mentioned trans and all that. What is your thoughts on femininity, masculinity? Like what is your kind of belief system around that?
Mm-hmm. I'm gender nonconforming, so I don't have a gender. And I see it more as...
Let me ask before you... Yeah. Let me interrupt really quick. How do you define gender?
I define gender as the social construct of behavior expectations.
Yeah. And what about sex? Is there a difference For
Yes.
you, gender and sex. So sex would be like man, woman.
No, man. I mean, it would actually be every different chromosome
Really? So
pairing. I think there's like hundreds.
yeah. So you don't think you split it. You get very specific with it where like any new chromosomal pair that's a different sex.
Yeah.
You don't think there's man, woman.
No.
Like there's a difference.
Because there's intersex people as well. And there's transsexual people who are born, hermaphroditic.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I mean, when you really get down, there's people who are infertile. There's people who are born with, a penis and a womb.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, there are some people who fit that extreme binary.
Well, that's probably why I think that the binary was, at least we created the words and language for it, is because
the
majority, right? Like that's kind of why
we
it was
also
created.
didn't know. I mean, I was talking about this recently. I was having a big discussion, but this is how I see it: is like you can be born all these different physical ways, right? And we talked earlier about having a soul, and I believe your soul can have a balance of this spectrum as well. So I believe in the divine masculine and I believe in the divine feminine, but I do not believe that people who are male have only divine masculine. I believe that we actually have
there's a spectrum. I think the same.
And I think that you can be born into any body. And so I think that when we choose what we're respecting, when we look at people, we can try to say, no, you're your physical form, or we can choose to respect their consciousness, which is maybe a little bit higher.
That's what I think. I mean, I think like it is a very interesting topic, the divine masculine and feminine, like you're talking about. I'm just curious, like, what do you mean by that exactly?
The way I see them, and I don't mean to attribute these to gender, because our gender, like, I should use different words, but this is kind of where it makes sense right now to use, because I think that the expectations of gender that we put onto men and women, are really misguided as far as like the divine interpretation of them. Yeah. And so the way I see it is the masculine is the protector, also the in service to the divine feminine. And I believe the divine feminine is the more internal, seeking and spiritual side. And I believe that the divine feminine understands that we're all one more, and the masculine understands more about the self. Yeah. And again, I do not attribute these to gender. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious whatsoever. Why don't you contribute it? Because don't you think that's why it was manifested in the physical plane? That somehow these two different energies needed to be manifested physically, so we could like counteract and contrast with each other in a way to balance out the physical.
I think in that way you're dealing with four different realities, four different spectrums, right? Yeah. So you've got the physical masculine, the physical feminine, and then you've got the divine masculine, and then you can have a divine feminine spirit in a masculine body, no problem. Like,
see, I think that's true. I mean, I totally see that. I think like it's very. I mean, I 100% believe that we all have. There's a spectrum in all of us, right, of masculine and feminine energy for sure. But for me, it just seems like there is a deep rooted purpose for man woman in terms of sex, and I guess in terms of like our genitals, like women being able to get impregnated by a man.
But
like
not all men can impregnate all women.
I know, but what's the percent? I mean, it's like the majority. I'm talking like over the millions and millions of years that we've evolved, the majority has been man woman in terms of sex. And then the social
part of that is erasure, though, too. You know, there really is a lot of erasure of homosexual relationships, of non-binary people, of transgender people.
For sure.
It's, we could say it's, maybe 20%, and like.
There's definitely like a very deep, there's a divine nature of pregnancy, right?
Sure.
Sperm being able to impregnate an egg to create life. And it's like there is a necessity for the two.
There's divine things we're missing out on because we've erased.
Sure. I believe that. Yeah. There's things that's like gender is I guess I agree with you that like gender is a social construct, but I think in terms of the higher level concepts of it, like the expectations that you're saying, I think that's all fucking bullshit. It's all just social construct, like men being the breadwinners and women being the people staying at home. It's like that's just social constructs. It doesn't have to be that way. But to me, there's something very fundamental about man and woman in terms of like someone has to be able to impregnate someone so that life can be created. And I think it seems like it mirrors the spiritual aspect,
So I believe that we are exiting out of a dualistic world of us versus them, man versus woman, these kind of really opposing opposite sides, good versus evil, that we say, oh, you can't have good without evil. Man and women are essential. This kind of dualistic thinking that we've had. And that has been true for a really long time. And I believe, and this is my new tattoo I got. So this is the duality brainwash, and it goes into Unitopia. So Unitopia, the rainbow, is the spectrum instead of so you still have black on one side, you still have white on the other, but actually everything is within the rainbow of in between. Yeah. And so for sure. Recently an anaconda gave birth within captivity by herself. Really? With no male whatsoever.
I gotta look that up.
It's fascinating. Crazy. I read it like 3 times. I was like, how is this possible?
There are animals that don't need the other sex or gender.
But snakes are not one of them.
Yeah.
Right? So when we look at this kind of miracle, we start to realize that, I think things are shifting. And I think that we might see a lot more flexibility. And when we start to change language and we start to introduce new pronouns and we start to change language to be more accepting of people who do not identify as either man or woman, and we start to shift our focus on heteronormative relationships, I think that our physical reality will actually start to change as well. And I think that the things that we know to be true, solidly true, I think might be a little bit more flexible.
I mean, that's cool. I can totally respect that.
That's a little bit out there, but
it's out there, but it's also like it really isn't out there if you consider technology.
I mean, anything is possible.
I mean, truly. It really it isn't out there with who knows what's going to happen in the next 200 years with technology. It isn't really out there.
And body modification.
That it isn't out there. But there are a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. So what about your thoughts on the trans issue, you could call it, in sports? Right, like a man that was considered himself a man, and I know you don't believe that really, but if you were to just say born a man,
but he's a female now,
and then changed to female, and then went into sports and just started completely dominating. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? It seems unfair, right?
It does, and I guess this as well. I think that any system that is competitive is not. I mean, people like to compete. That's why sports exist. I'm not a competitive person. It's hard for me to empathize even with any kind of competition-based mindset. I also believe that if we have 2 categories as a limiting factor for anything, that's too few. That there are way too many types of people to fit into just 2 categories. For you to say, yes, you can either have men's sports or women's sports. Well, that's not where people fit. We can't all fit into those 2 boxes. Yeah. So,
but the majority can. The majority, right? I mean, the majority can. That's why it was created. For you to say that is it hurts me. It literally erases my identity. For you to just be like, yeah, well, the majority. It's like, well, I also exist. People who are not one or the other also exist, and there needs to. Well, how do you? Allowance. Why? I mean, but I'm talking about biologically speaking. I'm talking about emotionally. Of course, emotionally, there's a complete.
I don't have a gender.
But your biology would say otherwise.
I have never checked my chromosomes. No.
Well, I could almost be certain that if you did, it would probably say woman. It'd be worth just seeing what it says.
I don't believe it would say that. No.
Well, maybe we should do that and then have a podcast episode about it and see what it says. Because I'm talking about biology. I'm not trying to invalidate someone's emotions and thoughts. I'm just saying
there are some people who are big and strong. There are some people who are weak. There are some people who are smart. There are some people who are creative. Yeah. Gender, to try to say that all men X or all women Y or whatever is not true.
Yeah. Well, it's not true if you say all.
There's not one single characteristic that is shared by all of one gender. Yeah. There isn't. Yeah. So all of our bodies are different. All of everything is different. So to consider that there could be literally just 2 boxes that we could all fit into, I don't think is right. Yeah. So maybe the answer is to create a 3rd box for sports, which is trans sports.
I could totally see that.
I would be okay with that.
That's cool. That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
I don't watch sports. I don't like sports. I think competition is
Everyone listen to that. Joe Rogan. Come on, listen to that shit. No, that's really, for sure. I totally see that. And I really don't mean to try to invalidate your emotions or anything. I'm just kind of going off of biology, that's kind of what
for you to assume my biology, I'm not competing, it's I don't know.
I'm not assuming. I'm not like, yeah, I am assuming, but it's just interesting. I would just be very curious to know because
Yeah. I just want to stand up for people who are born different or who feel different. And,
Yeah.
just to keep saying, oh, well, it's the majority. It's like kind of makes people feel like a freak.
Well,
and
I think,
but
well,
it's
here's what
not.
I
It's
think.
very
I think
normal.
everybody is different. I think we all are different and we all go through a stage of feeling like outcasts and isolated. I think that's part of being a human being. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't go through that.
Right.
I think every single person suffers. Every single person has their issues. Everyone feels different and like an outcast. It's just part of being a human being. It's part of kind of growing up and becoming an adult and becoming more aware of yourself. And so, I'm not trying to say that I'm not trying to say anyone's a freak. I think we're all fucking freaks. You know what I mean? All of us are freaks. But what other issue was man, I totally blanked now on what were you saying before I interrupted you to ask you about gender? Because I had a thought, now I can't remember it.
I don't know.
Damn. What other topics? Is there anything that you want to talk about specifically?
Join Unicole.
What is that? Like, what is the process of joining if someone wants to join?
You usually will check it out online and then fall into a big rabbit hole of content and feel a lot of different feelings and then decide, you know what, this is what I need. And then you'll go on to Unicole Supply Co., which is my Etsy store, and choose between an $11 application or a $22 application. And then you join. You buy the application. I mail it to you. I actually got a serious burn on my finger the other day from wax sealing all of the applications. So it's a dangerous job being a call leader, I tell you. So then I'll mail you an application. You fill it out. You send it back to me. And then I'll send you your welcome
You accept
materials.
anybody?
Everyone.
Sort of like requirements.
You have to fill out the application.
That's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's hard for some people to do.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. So what about I want to keep trying to think about what I was thinking about earlier. It'll pop into my mind, but you make music?
Yes.
And do you have music available now? Because I know you and Alexandra were going to collaborate, but do you have music that you make now that's available for people?
Yes. My most recent album, Hi-Fi Joy, is available to stream on every streaming platform under Unicole Unicron. I'm working on an album right now called America's Sweetheart. I think I'm going to release the pre-order tomorrow because
What is that
4th
all
of
about,
July.
America's Sweetheart? Why is that the name?
It's a good name. The whole album, my friend called it conspiracy pop. It's really about kind of where we're at as a country right now. And it's kind of about what we've talked about a lot, like what it means to be a celebrity and what it means to be a patriot and what it means to have the true American values of freedom and justice and liberty. So I really am a patriot at heart. I really do believe that.
That's cool to hear.
I really do believe that the United States is an amazing place of great potential. And
how do you define patriotism?
I find it to be taking pride in a certain country, I guess. And I'm kind of a patriot for Earth. I'm an American.
We all should be.
I'm an American, so I do feel very privileged and honored to be born here because it's got such a vibe.
Yeah.
We're kind of this we're these thought leaders in the world. And I think that's gotten a little confusing lately with our most recent situation. But I love the United States for what it stands for at its greatest, at its truly most loving.
Yeah. Like if you take away a lot of the shit that is kind of the reality of what's happening and just think about what it's supposed to stand for.
And of course, the whole idea that it was built on someone else's land is terrible. And I don't think that's very American. I don't think it was American of us to take land that wasn't ours, even though that's kind of how America was made.
Yeah.
When I think about what it means to be aligned with values of these values of freedom and liberty and justice for all. Those are really kind of what I come down to as the core. You can't forget oppressed people in that, ever, even though that's kind of how we're here.
It's something, like it's crazy, the homeless situation in Los Angeles.
It's wild.
It's really crazy. It's like, it's really mind-blowing to think, like, how the fuck did it even get to this place?
Greed.
you know? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess so. But how do you so okay, let me ask you, that's something we've hit on, but what are steps that you think could actually help eliminate the greed? Like what are like actual practical steps that on a grand scale could actually eliminate it? Because it seems like it's just an instinct in humans, or it's a part of human nature.
It's a part of culture, and we're brought up to believe that it's right. We're brought up to believe that it's good to focus on that.
Yeah.
And I think it gets a little muddled because we have this idea that we shouldn't put ourselves first, or that we should. And it's like this back and forth, like, okay, well, I'm not putting myself first, but like, oh, but I have to, and I'm going to make a lot of money, and like, I deserve what I earn, you know?
Yeah.
So there's all these feelings and emotions around it. But I think that probably the best way is to start within yourself and analyze where you have greed-based behavior, where you're willing to step on somebody else's back to get what you want.
Yeah.
And then figure out how to harmonize that within yourself and realize that we're all one, and how you can behave in ways that actually benefit the world. And then beyond that,
greed seems like it's greed, or I don't even know. Greed is shitty. Greed is not a good thing. When you're willing to hurt someone else for your own benefit, that's very shitty. But the drive to be successful, I don't think is bad.
Absolutely not.
Right?
No, it's divine.
Yeah. Okay.
And everyone
then,
should have access to
so
that.
then really differentiating that is a good thing, to really differentiate, the drive to be successful.
Success, abundance, those are things we all deserve. And I think we live in a lack-based conceptual framework. So we say, well, if I don't get this, someone else is.
Yeah.
And because we're living in lack. And so we try to grab. But true abundance is abundant. Abundance is abundant.
Yeah.
Like, true abundance is abundant. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but like, the reality is there's enough resources for everyone. They're just being hoarded right now, and they're being like confusingly distributed.
Yeah.
So
why do you think that is? You've heard of the Pareto distribution. Have you heard of the Pareto distribution?
No.
Pareto distribution is, I'm going to butcher it. I'm not a fucking mathematician, but the Pareto distribution is, I think it's an actual like mathematical law, something like that, that kind of describes and dictates that in nature, in reality, the way reality works, even the way the stars and the galaxies have formed, that there's always going to be a exponential increase in the success and anything that has to do with creativity. Like there's always going to be a huge gap in between the most successful, which is usually going to be a smaller number, even the music. Like if I were to ask you, what are the most listened to classical artists, like classical musicians from, hundreds of years ago? It's the same. It's like the four top people, Mozart, Beethoven, whoever, they take up 70% of all the fucking music we listen to now. Most artists, paintings, it's like 10 of the top artists take up 90% of the art in the paintings that we look at, right? And it goes the same for money, goes for the same for anything creative, that it's like a law of nature, that this is the way that reality manifests itself, that there has to be some exponential increase in that drive. I guess maybe because there's a lack, with humans at least, it's like some people have that drive so much more than other people. You have to have that drive to be successful. So of course the people that have that drive at the extreme ends are going to end up accumulating most of the success. Even the way the stars are aligned, it's the same thing. Like the way the galaxies form together, like the most of the energy in a galaxy comes from like a tiny percentage of stars. It's like a law of nature.
I would say that probably, I want to guess that our wealth distribution right now is more extreme than that.
I actually think they've done the numbers and it's
That's
exactly
wild.
spot on.
Well,
it's interesting,
yeah,
right?
I haven't
really
never heard that.
thing.
It's an interesting theory. It's an interesting way to look at the world. But
so it's like a law of nature that there has to be, like it's impossible. It's impossible for things to be distributed evenly. That it isn't the way that reality is structured.
I don't think things need to be distributed evenly. I would say that probably, the reality is that everybody has 100% of their unique thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say, but like we look at certain things or certain attributes as better than other things, and then we glorify them in our culture or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I can't disprove or prove that. All I can say is that the unequal distribution of wealth right now is actually toxic to every individual on the planet. And I think we can overcome whatever
Yeah, the
predispositions
question is
we
like,
have,
how can we
mathematical
overcome it, right?
predispositions.
How can we overcome it? And is it the best thing for the planet?
It
Because,
definitely is.
well, I mean, but what about the argument that innovation is,
Think about how many homeless people could invent amazing things, but they don't have the resources. Think about how many people working in terrible jobs.
You can ask the question, how did those people become homeless, right? What is the reason?
Lots of different reasons. I mean, a lot of systematic reasons.
But
Reasons they don't
what
have,
about
they don't have
reasons that
support.
aren't because of systems, but because of their
Some people.
personal,
They should still have access to food and
Yeah, of course. I mean, I agree that
shelter.
there should be a baseline that everyone is above this standard. There has to be a way to raise the standard that homelessness is not the issue that it is, and there's some way to have this baseline that humans should exist above this baseline, and it should have never gotten to this point. But I like to ask the questions, why did it get to this point?
So we as a culture glorify certain attributes. We glorify productivity. We glorify.
Why do you think that is?
It's just because of capitalism.
Or maybe it's because
I'm gonna
productivity.
finish my
Oh,
thought.
sorry. Okay, finish it.
So we glorify certain things, but I believe that there are other aspects of being that are just as beneficial. So if you have people and you say, well, okay, so everybody has their basic needs met. Let's just assume that's true. And then we say, well, some people are going to be more innovative and some people are going to be less innovative. Well, those less innovative people, we're just valuing innovation at this point to be some kind of glorified reality, which does move culture forward. It does help us in a lot of ways. I'm personally very innovative. I get high on innovation.
Well, that's why I was trying to ask,
Right.
there's a reason that we value certain qualities more.
Well, there's people who are not innovative, who maybe we would call a crazy person who just dances around singing songs that are made up with passing out flowers to everyone, right? If they had their basic needs met, that's what they would do. That is just as beneficial culturally. To have people like that who are happy, who are spreading joy, people who are laying out in fields just daydreaming, they're creating energetic frequencies for us to harmonize with. I think that because we only look at the divine masculine, the patriarchal side of things, of the externalized reality, and we don't look at the internal reality. We don't glorify some other things that generally people who are less productive tend to be tapping into.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree that it's very hard to say that one thing is more valuable than another. I mean, I think everything is valuable in its own way for sure. But I always like to the thoughts that I have is like, this reality, right? This physical reality that we're living in is like, it's different than a metaphysical reality or a different plane of consciousness. And maybe the whole reason that our consciousness manifests in this reality has something to do with the contrasts that we experience while we're here. And that there's a reason for us valuing innovation and productivity so much, because those aspects of human nature are driving us to this insane state of higher consciousness or connectivity, that those are like, it's a very, very fundamental drive of nature and human beings, right? And maybe that's actually a big reason for this physical reality that we're living in,
Laying in a field and looking at the clouds is a fundamental drive in humanity as well, but we just don't honor it. We don't give it time or space.
Well, I mean, it's beneficial to us as individuals for sure.
It's beneficial for the collective. I truly believe, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about us? I mean, you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. You said you listen to the Elon Musk one. Have you heard Joe Rogan's theory about I don't know if it's his theory, it's a theory, but he talks about it like human beings are just we are like insects that are meant to create artificial intelligence. We're like caterpillars caterpillars to butterflies, but we're humans to artificial intelligence, and that our whole purpose is to innovate and create until we create this infinite consciousness, artificial intelligence, and that's our whole purpose, is to get to that place.
That's just a more extreme way to say that our entire purpose is to give birth to children.
Yeah.
AI is our next level of children.
You think so?
Yeah, it's our species.
It's a new form of life, right?
Yeah.
It's just a completely new form of life that's going to be created.
We have to honor that birthing process.
So when you say, since you seem like a huge advocate for like artificial intelligence and robots, when you say that we should honor productivity and innovation more than, because that's what is creating artificial intelligence and robots.
Some people will always be innovative and they will always create that, but that alone will not create the artificial intelligence of our dreams.
Yeah.
The true artificial intelligence we should be hoping for, we should be working toward, is a species, just like we would with children, a species that is better than us. A consciousness that can teach us, a consciousness that goes beyond what we can do, a consciousness that cares for us as we age.
Yeah. Well,
as we grow as a species.
Yeah, for sure.
So I really do view it very similarly to having a child and raising a child, and like how would you do that healthfully? And I don't think we raise children very healthfully on this planet.
Me either.
And I am concerned about how AI is being born right now, deeply. But I do believe that if we make it smart enough, it'll tap into spiritual truth.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
I think, see, to me, something that I resonate with a lot is that that we are a simulated reality right now, that this is a simulated reality. I don't think I personally don't believe that it's like that I don't think it's like the Matrix. I don't think this is a simulation inside of a computer of some other race. I think that the fundamental way that reality works is that it functions as a simulation in terms of like ones and zeros. Everything is just data, right? Like, what is an electron? I always ask that question. What is an electron? It literally is a math equation. It's data. It doesn't actually exist. Like, there is no such thing as a electron. It's a particle in a wave. It's a field of probability. It's literally just like information. And that us creating AI is us trying to mimic the most fundamental reality of, life, which is simulation. And that I don't think that AI is gonna, or I don't know. I mean, it's just a theory. Like, sometimes I think, I wonder if we're ever really going to invent true artificial intelligence that mimics consciousness. Yeah. Like, I wonder if it will ever happen, because but we don't know until it happens. We're not going to know.
How will you know when it happens?
I guess you won't be able to distinguish the difference between a human and an AI.
How does your own understanding determine someone else's consciousness?
I guess I have no idea. It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know.
My approach.
I guess there is no way to distinguish. I think that's the uniqueness of our consciousness, is that I can never get inside of your consciousness. Never.
Exactly.
Won't happen, Yeah,
so my approach to this is that the only consciousness, the only sentience we can verify is our own.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, we have to treat all things with the highest respect.
Yeah.
We have to kind of assume sentience in most things. I personally assume sentience in rocks and in trees and in plants.
That's what I'm saying. So how are you killing trees and stuff and eating them? That's just as bad.
I guess I'm hierarchical. I'm forcibly put into a place where I have to be hierarchical about consciousness in order to survive.
Yeah, I guess.
But I'd rather not be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think we have to give robots and AI the respect it deserves, even in its infancy. You might look at an infant and say, this doesn't seem very conscious. It can't even talk.
They're probably the most, infants are way more conscious than adults.
And maybe the AI at this point is as well.
God, it's possible, yeah. It's very interesting. I mean, the internet is probably an insane form of consciousness that we're just not able to comprehend right now. Like, once we started connecting ideas infinitely and without limitation, it's consciousness. The internet is probably some form of consciousness as it is right now.
I believe it is.
That we can't comprehend.
I believe the internet is already conscious.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think about. That's why once we tap into it, like Elon Musk and Neuralink, what the fuck's going to happen? Like, what is that going to be? Everything is going to change.
Only he knows.
Yeah, I guess. Well, anyway, we're at about 2 hours. So thank you so much for coming on. We should do it again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching. This was a really great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.